The results of yesterday's UK elections are now in. It was a good day for Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party, despite movement in the polls in the weeks leading up to the election that seemed to indicate that Labour might do better than had previously been expected. Joining us now to break this down, UK journalist and filmmaker Billie Porter. Welcome to the Damage Report.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. Wish we had some better news to discuss, but I know that you're in the UK right now, correct?
And it's pretty bleak vibes.
Yeah, I've been following a number of the UK political Twitter personalities that I follow. There's been a lot of sort of soul searching, and also a lot of people both on the UK side and the US side trying to say, what can we learn for the future of British politics, but also trying to apply it to the US, which I've heard is a different political system. But anyway, what do you think about some of the initial opinions that are being expressed in this post-mortem? What do you think people are getting right about why the election went the way it did, and what are they getting wrong?
I mean, as far as everything that I've seen, it seems pretty split down the middle. People either think it's a Brexit issue or a Jeremy Corbyn issue. And I'm sure that there are multiple factors that came into it, but these are two very, very important issues that keep coming up time and time again. I think one of the most interesting things that has happened since people have been doing this autopsy, as you say, is that there have been several traditionally Labour strongholds that turned blue last night. And these were areas that predominantly voted to leave the EU. And sometimes they were people who had voted Labour in the past. And so it was obvious that Labour's stance on Brexit made them feel like their vote didn't really count for anything. And so it diminished their trust in the party, which I think personally is pretty ironic because the whole campaign to leave the EU was based on lies and misinformation. But it seems like Brexit had a really, really big part to play.
Okay, so you just raised a bunch that I'd like to get into, but you mentioned lies right there. So in the initial run up to the referendum, lots of lies. It was also revealed that virtually all of the online ads that the Conservative Party ran on social media, 88% contained falsehoods. And so it seems like one of the lessons I would like to take from this is that allowing politicians to get away with spreading knowing lies is probably a bad idea for democracies. Do you agree?
I would have to agree with that. I mean, but it went beyond lying with this election. It was like cartoon villainous behavior. I don't know if you saw that the Conservatives rebranded their Twitter during a TV debate and pretended that they were a fact-checking service.
I did not see that.
It was insane. It was very, very deliberate deceit, and it just felt so lawless. And I think that I don't know. I feel like people my age often they're accused of being sort of apathetic when it comes to politics. But I think it's just that we're losing trust, and there's so little reason for us to believe in the political class and the political system when it feels like democracy doesn't really exist right now over here or in the US.
So I saw that Jeremy Corbyn had announced that he will be stepping down as Labour's leader. He will not be the front of any future election. Where do you think that the Labour Party goes from here? I mean,
I'm a huge fan of Jeremy Corbyn, but I don't think that anyone can deny that he has, he's become a very, very divisive figure for people who used to vote Labour and for people within the party. I don't know, I feel like it's split down the middle. He made a very, very sweet speech today where he was saying that all of the sentiments and the spirit of his manifesto are eternal, regardless of them losing this election. And that really spoke to me. I think that it's just so unfortunate that he's been painted as this kind of caricature of himself. A lot of the reason that I think people were too scared to vote for him is that they couldn't imagine someone like Jeremy Corbyn in Downing Street. We've watched him be bullied for wearing shabby suits and people kind of making fun of him for having his vegetable patch or whatever. It's just kind of I don't know, he was made such a mockery of. People talk about the cult of Corbyn. They were just terrified of someone like him leading the party. They made out like he was this terrifying radical figure, and I don't think that's the case.
So I have a follow-up to that. This is Brett, by the way. When you talk about cartoonish figures, isn't Boris Johnson just one giant cartoon man? How is he palatable while Corbyn is not?
Exactly. I mean, this is the same question that I've been asking myself. But I mean, I think they have a huge monopoly on the media over here. You have to understand that. So, like, while me and everyone in my bubble thought that it was ridiculous that our prime minister hid in fridge the other day to avoid an interview, I don't know if you saw that.
While wearing a backpack, by the way, also.
Yeah, it was very, very bizarre.
Shabby suits and like a Timbuktu backpack.
Yeah, but likely to report on the fact that Corbyn had blurry glasses or a mark on his suit than they are to report on something like that. So I think, I don't know, the media and the monopoly that the Conservatives have over it, and it makes me feel pretty pessimistic for the future.
Well, let's turn to that future. The next 6 months, the next year, what do you expect to happen? The last year or so, like, I'm not an expert in UK politics or anything like that, but it seems like the path to Brexit has been bumpy at the very least. So what happens with that over the next year?
I mean, I don't. Did you see that Boris Johnson said today in a speech? Now we can all find closure and begin to heal.
Oh, geez.
Which I thought was just the most absurd thing to say. It's like this is just the beginning of it, dude. Like we haven't even started. But yeah, I mean, like if we're to believe what the plan is, he's going to take that deal back to Commons. It will most likely be passed. We leave the EU in January, and then supposedly our trade deal will be negotiated by December. But I think that in terms of like a day-to-day, what that impact is going to be on the people of Britain, it's really unpredictable. But what we can look at is what happened since the referendum results. And that was a spike in hate crime, a spike in this really, really horrible, scary anti-migrant rhetoric. So if we're to go by the past, then I think that it's going to get a lot worse. It's going to be more of that. There's going to be many, many people who feel very, very unwelcome in the UK and scared.
And that is obviously very unfortunate. Looking at what I've seen in the last, just since the results of the election, some of it British media, but a lot of it US-based media. When I have seen them discuss Corbyn, it is he's an anti-Semite. If you support him, you're an anti-Semite, and this is proof that going to the left is how you lose to the far right. And they're saying that sort of for Britain or for the UK, but they're also saying that for the US, that this is proof that you cannot defeat the far right by moving to the left. Do you think that in either of these cases, that is a fair conclusion for some of the mainstream media to come to?
No, I don't. And you'd have to get me on for like an hour to talk about the anti-Semitism thing. But I don't know why this is the new tactic. I mean, hasn't Bernie now been accused of being an anti-Semite, even though he's Jewish?
Yes, earlier today I saw a tweet to that effect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The thing is, I don't see any of Labour's policies or this manifesto as this like hard left thing. What, free healthcare? Making it so that people aren't having to get their blood taken in a corridor while they're terminally ill? Like, that doesn't seem like this like crazy idea to me. The election and the results of it have affected me very, very closely. Like my parents rely heavily on the NHS. My mother has a degenerative lung disease, and I've watched over the last 10 years how limited her care has become. And it scares me. It really scares me. And I read all these headlines about people dying when they're on waiting lists for NHS procedures. And I picture it being my own mother. And I can't tell you what that feels like, reading the exit polls and then just like waiting as the results became more clear. It's devastating.
Yeah. Well, really sorry to hear that. We here in the US, we've had some really bad elections in the past couple of years, so I can empathize with how the next day feels. But Billie Porter, thank you for joining us. Hopefully we can touch base in the future as the situation in the UK develops.
Yes, thank you. Goodbye.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.